Hello, everybody. Welcome back, and thank you so much for joining me today. Today, our guest is Megan Carney. She is a psychologist based in Idaho. She hates small talk, and she's been working towards better boundaries personally and professionally for years. Megan is also a mom of one. Welcome, Megan.
Thanks for having me, Kayla.
Yeah, and as I always ask everybody, what is your definition of balance?
Well, I think of it usually more as harmony than balance. And I learned this in a
Mm.
yoga class, actually, when we were learning to balance. And the instructor told us the goal is not to be perfectly balanced. We will
Mm.
wobble, we will fall, and we get to decide if we're putting our foot down, stopping, starting over, or just adjusting. And that the real goal is that we're trying to find harmony in that process. And that
Wow.
is actually what I look for in life because
Mm.
we can plan things down to a T, but life is never going to go exactly according to plan, and things are
Nope,
never
it's
going
not.
to be perfectly balanced, especially when you add kids to the mix.
Yeah, yeah. Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
But that is such a beautiful definition because it encompasses all of the things that people struggle with when they are trying to find balance in their lives, especially moms, because moms often are holding the load of everything, trying to
Mhm.
juggle everything.
Mhm. Yeah, I just get this like image of a mom on like the high wire at a circus or something, and she's like both balancing and juggling while on this high wire.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I know that because we are friends. If I didn't already say that, I
Yeah.
meant to say that. I meant to say that Megan is a dear friend of mine when I did the introduction, but that is being stated now. So, Megan is a friend of mine. We actually meet weekly for some accountability stuff with our businesses. And so, because I know you and I know you do a lot of work with boundaries, how is having boundaries helpful with creating this balance and harmony in life?
Well, I learn things the hard way. And so when I haven't had the boundaries I've needed in the
Mm.
past, everything tilts to one side, right? You fall off that high wire because
Mm.
you're focusing so much on this thing over here, which oftentimes is your family, and you've
Yeah.
neglected yourself on the other side that you just can't keep it together anymore. And it all
Hmm.
falls apart, and you're not taking care of yourself or your family. So I learned pretty early on that I needed to create time and space for myself, for taking care of me, to be able to show up as the mom and the partner that I want to be.
Hmm. And what does that look like for you?
That comes out in all areas of life for me. It comes out in like my bedtime is because it's not just my kid that
Mm.
needs a bedtime, I need one too.
Yeah.
It comes out in what my availability is to see clients
Mm.
and adjusting that so that it works for the whole family. My spouse and I are both self employed, and we've worked it out so that Fridays are flexible and 2 days a week I'm home when my kiddo gets home, and the other 2 days
Mm.
my spouse is home when my kiddo gets home.
Hmm.
It's looked like saying, I need 10 minutes to meditate. Please do not interrupt me.
Yeah.
It has looked like creating a routine of going to yoga. And when I fall out of that
Mm.
routine, like restating it, recreating the routine again,
Yeah.
because we're not perfect, right? That's harmony.
Hmm.
And it also looks like setting boundaries with my kiddo on things like interrupting me or um, how she might treat us, because she's 9, almost 10, and she's growing the
Mm.
attitude.
Yeah. The
Um,
tween attitude that often
yes,
comes out.
yes, yes. Such a sweet kid, but sometimes the attitude is just there. I'm sure there's things I'm missing too. There are lots of ways that I
Mm.
have set boundaries around my time and around my space
Mhm.
to make life better balanced for me.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you pointed it out because those were the main themes, time and space for you,
Hmm.
when other people's balance and harmony might be around other things. Maybe they have
Hmm.
amples of time, but maybe they don't have enough space. Or
Hmm.
maybe they want more connection with
Hmm.
with other people in their life.
Hmm.
And so those are really great points to bring up because
Yeah.
I think oftentimes, especially when we're, listening to podcasts or listening to self-improvement stuff, we try and mimic what other people are doing and not
Hmm.
trying to create something that works for us in what we need.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And, a lot of what I've done in family life with setting boundaries, I learned the hard way when the pandemic happened and we
Mm,
all had to stay home for a really long time.
yeah.
And I learned the hard way because my spouse and I were both trying to have our offices in the same room and like alternate who was in the room when. And I like to be neat and organized. He is
Mm,
not very neat and organized. And I just remember crying to him one day. I was like, I just need time and space for myself. Like that's when I was like,
yeah.
oh, those are like really,
Mm,
really my needs.
mm-hmm.
And the time goes sometimes now to like making connections with other people, having time to like go out with
Mm-hmm.
friends. Um,
Yeah.
but I learned by noticing what I was lacking, right? I
Mm,
didn't have a tidy space that I could work out of and do a little bit of meditation or yoga. And I did not have a moment that
mm,
was uninterrupted to myself for a little while until I said what I needed.
mm-hmm. And I know oftentimes people get stuck in, well, how do I know that this is something that I need?
Mm-hmm.
And if it is, how do I get past the guilt of asking for it?
Mm-hmm.
Because, as someone who works with a lot of moms, you're a mom yourself.
Yep.
This is something that comes up often with moms. Like, sure,
Mm-hmm.
yes, I want to spend time on my own or I want to do something for myself, but when it gets time to doing it, the guilt just creeps up and like, no, I should just stay home with my kids, or no, I should just, fold the laundry instead or do the dishes.
Mm-hmm. And then you end up doing it all
Yeah.
until you break,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the breaking point comes if you're doing it all. I don't care who you are, the breaking
It
point will
does. It
come.
really does.
um, that's one of the things that I work a lot on with my clients as well is the guilt that comes up with asking for whatever it is that they want or
Mm-hmm.
need. And the first thing that I always do is just lean into listening to the guilt. Like, why is that there? What
Mm.
what are we so concerned about is going to happen
Yeah.
if we don't feel guilty?
Mm.
What do we say that that means about us if we don't feel guilty? And
Yeah.
usually there's something bigger there, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
concerned about what other people are going to think about us, or that we're
Yeah.
not a good enough mom or a good enough
Mm-hmm.
spouse, or we're not doing enough. And the reality is, like, that is just not true. For
No.
99% of us, we are given it our all. And
Mm-hmm.
hard to see that when you're on the inside of it, because
Mm-hmm.
there
Yeah, it
is
is.
always more that you could give, or it seems like there is, but eventually your well runs
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That
dry.
was
My kid,
actually, that's, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say my kiddo got this book in kindergarten. It's called How Full Is Your Bucket? And it,
Okay.
you know, it talks about when like something maybe mean is said or done to a
Mm,
person, how some drops fall out of their bucket. When something positive is happening, drops go into their bucket. And you can see that the people who have these like almost empty buckets usually look like sad or mad or something. And the people with the full
mm,
buckets are playing and happy. And that's what life is for all of us, with our energy and how much we're putting into ourselves or others are putting into
mm,
us, so that we can get our buckets to be almost overflowing so that we do have something to give. And to
yeah.
me, like that's a big piece of combating the guilt. It's like I need to have enough that I can give lovingly
Mm-hmm.
and freely and with compassion and not end up feeling resentful that I'm giving so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because you will. That resentment will build inside of you. I don't care who you are, unless you're doing something to counterbalance that,
Yeah.
to add to your own bucket or cup or however you want to look at it.
Yeah.
That was actually something that I struggled with myself. And funny thing is
Mhm.
I just talked about that in my stories earlier today because I had posted a ask me anything on motherhood and marriage. And that's the first question that I got asked is what was the hardest part? And the hardest part is resting, allowing myself to take a break and do things that I wanted to do, even though there were other, house chores
Mhm.
that needed to be done.
Mhm.
And it took me realizing there are always going to be other things that need to be done all of the time. When it
Yep.
comes to life, there's always things that are undone. It's never going to be perfect. Your to-do list is always going to have something on it.
Mhm.
And if we're waiting for that to be empty, we're going to be waiting a really long time
Yeah.
or we're going to burn out.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
so once I realized that if I want to keep good relationships with my family, the people living with me,
Mhm.
I have to do things for myself. I have to allow myself to slow down
Mhm.
and give myself the things that I do need to show up as a good mom
Mhm.
in the way that I want to show up.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I I have a similar response to that question of like, what's the hardest thing for you
Yeah.
as a parent? And I always say, like, to my other mom friends, everyone, like, sometimes the hardest part is managing your own crap enough that you can handle your
Yeah.
kids' crap.
Yes, that's another one. Yes. That one didn't come to my mind in the moment, but that one is hard.
Right? And for me, like, that was part of me recognizing I needed the time and space to handle my own stuff so that I could help
Hmm.
my kiddo with her stuff.
Yeah, because we struggle with our own stuff because we haven't already been taught how to deal with it, how to work through it. And that's why parenting can be so difficult and so challenging
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of
Mm-hmm.
us are trying to do it differently than how we were raised. So we didn't have that
Yes.
model to go off of.
Yes. Absolutely. And it definitely feels like we're on this like generational cusp, right? Where like
Hmm.
we're many of us trying to do things differently and make lots of space for feelings that no matter how
Yeah.
big the feelings are. And that's not how most of us grew up.
Hmm. Yeah. So kind of going back,
Mhm.
do you have any good boundaries that you usually give to clients to kind of practice with?
I don't have a standard one that I give them to practice. Partially because even though almost all of them need some help in that area, um, they have different areas of life where
Hmm.
it's easier for them to start with, or different areas of life that they're stuck on, right? So
Mm.
it
Yeah.
might be um, with their parent, even though they're an adult, like that could be a really challenging person to set
Yeah.
boundaries with. Other times I've worked with people where the boundary that needs to be set is at work because they
Mm.
are working like 80, 90 hours a week and it's not worth it in any way to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, so I don't have a standard one that I
Hmm.
tell people. I usually start with helping people figure out what they need. So then they
Mm.
get to that place of, okay, so how do I say this?
Yes.
How do I do this? What happens
Yes.
when
Yes.
they push back?
Uh-huh. And I really asked that question to highlight that it's because there's a lot of boundary tips on social media with like different scripts and stuff, which are
Yeah.
great. But if you're not working with, hand in hand with a therapist who is supporting you and guiding you in that, it might be difficult to know where to start and
Mhm,
which boundaries are going to be most important for you in this moment versus
mhm,
some that maybe are for later or you might not even have to introduce.
mhm. Yeah, even by the time this podcast comes out, I will probably have like 20 things to say to set
Mm,
boundaries, compassionate boundaries.
yeah.
Um, and I encourage you to just pick a couple out of 20,
Hmm.
right? Like pick
Yeah.
the easy ones, pick the ones that matter to you because there is no set standard way
Mm,
of setting the boundary of what boundary you want to set, of how to
hmm.
say it, when to say it, who to say it to. Like all of
Yeah.
those variables matter, the context
Hmm.
matters. And so we might adjust things based on that context.
Yeah. Oh, and I love that you said compassionate boundaries because recently I've been seeing a lot of kind of pushback against boundaries because they feel so negative. Like
Mm-hmm.
if I'm setting a boundary, then I'm being mean
Mm-hmm.
or I have to do it in this mean way. When yes, there's some stuff to unpack there. Boundaries don't mean you're mean, right?
No.
But boundaries are something that you can put in place compassionately.
Mhm. Yeah.
And honestly, it really takes compassionate boundaries often for people to hear them and really understand them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just the standard advice of like, well, just say no. Like that never resonated with me.
Yeah.
Still doesn't. I will just say no if after a few times of saying it, like you're still trying to push me. I'll probably just
Yeah.
say no because
Uh-huh.
I'm not going to convince you anyway, right? But for most people, especially like the people that we are in relationship with in any way, are the people that we are gonna need to set boundaries with. And
Hmm.
of course, they're the people that we want to preserve that relationship with. So we want to set a compassionate boundary with them.
Hmm.
I set compassionate boundaries with my family. My clients set compassionate boundaries and started there to preserve relationships instead of having to
Hmm.
just cut somebody out completely, right? Like
Yeah.
that's way
Yeah.
more compassionate.
Hmm. Hmm. And I think that's where a lot of people kind of get put off when the topic of boundaries is brought up. It's because that's their initial thought is boundaries means I'm cutting someone off completely, when that's not the case at all. Boundaries really helps you to continue having this relationship, maybe long term, if that's what you want.
Yes, exactly. I really love the quote by, I think it's Prentice Hemphill. They, I'm not sure their pronouns, so I'll say they, say, um, boundaries are the distance at which I can love both you and me equally, or something to the
Mm,
effect of that, right? Like
yeah.
when you're over giving, when you don't have
Hmm.
good enough boundaries for yourself, as we brought up earlier, like that's when the resentment builds towards the person
Yeah.
on the other side of it, even though they may have done nothing wrong. You just don't have enough to give. And
Hmm.
you need to be the one to say, like, well, actually, here's my line of like
Yeah.
what I can give. And then they get to meet you at that line because they're
Hmm.
not in our heads, they're not in our lives. They can't know that we've overgiven. How
Yeah.
are they supposed
They
to
don't.
know?
Hmm. Yeah. And I think a lot of the times when we've given so much, that resentment almost forces us to believe these people know, they're just continuing to ask me because they know I say yes.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, and we're taught to believe that too, right? Like, and there is some
Hmm.
truth to it because, like, in employment, for example, right, we know that an employer is going to squeeze as much out of you as they can get out of
Yeah.
you for as little as they can because their goal is profit, at least
Hmm.
usually. I mean, not when you're in a nonprofit necessarily, or really good, healthy work environments because those do exist.
Yeah.
But there are lots of places and lots of people where they are going to keep asking. And
Hmm.
maybe it is because you've kept saying yes, but that's also because they don't know what that yes has meant for you, what
Hmm.
you have given up, how much you've overgiven, how exhausted you
Yeah.
are, because you keep rising to the
Hmm.
occasion at the detriment of yourself.
Yeah.
And no company, no human can know that unless we tell them.
Hmm. Yeah. And I had recently read something that was talking about how in our childhood, when we're striving for the A, that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of what creates this, cycle in our working life, because there's usually no A to strive for, but we're still trying to strive for it, even in our work environment. Sure,
Mm-hmm.
there might be raises or promotions, but that is not the case for everybody. There are some people who are still trying to give it their all to get the A when there's no A that's going to be given,
Right,
which, will lead you to burnout. It's going to
right.
put you in burnout.
Same with parenting, right? Like, where's my A for parenting?
Yeah.
That's never gonna come.
Yeah.
I'm
Or
not
the
gonna
A
do
for
a letter
being like
grade.
the best mom, right? No one's grading us. There is
No.
no system that's like, this is the best mom ever, and she gets this. No.
Yeah, but we have that expectation for ourselves. I mean, I was one of those kids, right, who was always striving
Hmm.
for the A. The A minus was like, well, why didn't you get an A?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that level of like almost overachieving, or it can create like some perfectionism in us, right?
Hmm.
Where we're always trying to be the best, always trying to
Hmm.
get first place or be on the winning team or get the
Yeah.
A or have
Hmm.
the best job, whatever that means to you.
Yeah. I remember in undergrad, I I got a C. That was the first C that I had ever gotten. I was devastated. I was
Mm-hmm.
so devastated. And I had called my mom and I was crying. And the first thing that came out of her mouth was like, it's okay. C's get degrees. But in the moment, I was so mad. I was like, what? What do you mean C's to get degrees? Because my entire life, they had told me that I needed to strive for the A. and that if I had gotten anything less, I was better than that. So I needed the A. And then here I am in college with a C. And it's like, oh no, C's get degrees. Like, what is that? And
Yep.
and it didn't what I wasn't even taking into consideration is I got the C as a freshman in a class that juniors and seniors took. And
Uh-huh.
so those, when you look back, you're like, oh, that is probably pretty awesome that I got a C, that I even was able to
Yeah.
pass the class because it was at a such higher level. No, I was just thinking I couldn't get this A.
Mm-hmm.
And it was thinking back on it, how eye-opening that is, that
Mm-hmm.
I was so devastated for something that literally had no impact on the rest of my education or the rest of my career or
Right.
life. This one class that really didn't mean anything. I just needed to pass it to get my degree later on.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had a very similar experience where I didn't get below an A until undergrad, and I was like, "What is happening?"
Yeah, I remember I was so stressed out by that class. It was neuroscience, actually. Still
Uh-huh.
remember. Still remember the class. It was so hard. It was taught by four professors, four different professors. So every test was a different professor. So basically, you were trying to learn a whole new teaching style four different times versus having one professor and you're like, okay, this first test was like a test to figure them out, right? No,
Yeah.
they were different every time. Yeah. So
Yeah, you were figuring it out as you went every time.
every time. Yes. Yeah. But one of the things that I also wanted to, talk to you about, because this often comes up with moms and being able to trust themselves.
Mm-hmm.
What steps can people take to start feeling like they can trust themselves?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think what's we have to ask ourselves first is like, well, wait a second, like, why don't I trust myself?
Mm.
Like, why is that?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's some messages that we got earlier in life. Maybe it's because we've made some mistakes or bad decisions
Mm.
in the past. And we can't even trust that, like, we need to make that mistake to learn.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, so that's one part of it. And I think the other piece of it is when we're caught up in momming and we're just like dealing with what comes at us, right? Because life moves
Mm-hmm.
so fast when you're a mom. And it kind of feels like you're in crisis management all the time.
It can. Yeah.
You don't get a chance to pause and really pay attention to what you need, to even know what you need. So, like,
Mm.
how can you trust yourself when you're in that situation where
Mm-hmm.
you can't even pause long enough with enough clarity to say, okay, what do I actually really need here? Or what does this
Yeah.
situation really need?
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, we can't trust ourselves because we haven't even been listening to ourselves to
Mm.
know what
Yes.
to trust, right?
Yeah.
Because we've been shoving down our feelings, our needs,
Mm-hmm.
our
Yeah.
concerns to focus on everyone.
So the first step into being able to trust yourself is start listening to what's going on within you.
Because even if you're so well trained, I would say, you're so experienced at shoving down your emotions. Like you're
Mm-hmm.
even if you can't really access those, your body's going to tell you, right? You're going to be getting
Mm-hmm.
sick more often. You're going to be exhausted.
Yeah.
It's going to take you longer to recover when you do get sick. And if you have littles, like you're getting sick anyway, right?
Yes, yes.
Because that's
I've
that's
been sick
life
for
of a
like a whole
little
month.
one.
So
I am very thankful to be past that phase. But like it takes longer to recover when you have just been giving and giving and not taking
Mhm.
that time to listen to what your body needs. And when it's taking you a really long time to recover and you're trying to force yourself to push through, right? Or
Mhm.
trying to like drag yourself out of bed in the morning, then there's a really good chance that you haven't been listening to your body well enough because your
Mm.
body is like screaming at you to take care
Yeah.
of yourself with rest, with water, with the
Mhm.
foods that work for your body.
Yeah. And that's actually something that I've been talking a lot about recently is that your body is trying to send you messages,
Mm-hmm.
but it takes stopping, slowing down
Mm-hmm.
to listen and start becoming in tune with what those messages are.
Yeah.
And a lot of people I find struggle with slowing down.
Mm-hmm.
I recently had done a poll in my stories and Instagram, and everyone who had clicked the poll said that they struggled most with knowing when to slow down.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's we need to just slow down just because first,
Mm-hmm.
so that we can learn what those cues our body is telling us that it's time to slow down.
Mm-hmm.
We can't wait till the end because we won't be able to hear those messages as
Yeah.
clearly.
Yep. Unless your body really takes you out and you land in the hospital.
Yes.
And I don't wish that upon any of you.
No, no, but that can happen. It really can.
It can, yes.
My husband had talked to me about my husband has a daughter with a past relationship, and she's already going to graduate high school. That's how long ago it was. But when she was a baby, he worked like a 12-hour shift a night and then would come home and be with her while her mom went to work. That means he was staying up so much longer. He ended up really getting himself in the hospital because
Wow.
he wasn't sleeping. And I know I'm talking about a male in this, but oftentimes it's the moms who
Yeah.
are following those patterns where
Yeah.
we're doing so much that we don't stop or we
Mm-hmm.
don't sleep or there's things that we don't do. Well, he landed himself in the hospital. I think he said he slept for like 48 hours straight,
Wow.
and he was just so dehydrated, so exhausted. And yeah, so you really can land yourself in hospital if you overdo it. Your body is going to make you stop because it's going to do what it needs to do to protect itself.
Mm-hmm. It absolutely will. And I don't know if you've read the book Burnout by Emily and Amelia Nagoski.
I
Uh,
haven't.
they talk about one of them ended up in the hospital because
Mm,
they burnt themselves out. Like they were really needing some serious medical care
wow.
because they just ran themselves so ragged.
Hmm.
Hence the book developing and coming out. I highly recommend it.
No, yes, I think this is the second or third time that that book has come up. So I really do need to put it on my Audible queue.
It's a good one. It is a really good one.
This whole conversation has really been about getting needs met, what to do to get your needs met.
Mhm.
Where should people start in figuring out what those needs are? Because I think that's another thing women struggle with, moms struggle with is just recognizing what is it that I do need
Mm-hmm.
and being able to voice those or even write them down for yourself,
Yeah.
because I know sometimes that guilt will make us believe we don't need them or we shouldn't need them or we shouldn't want them.
Yeah. If you're at a place where you can't even identify what you need, then there's a really good chance that you
Mm.
need to be looking at your basic needs.
Mm.
And to me, that means one, making time, and it doesn't even have to be a lot of time, but making a little bit of time for you to be able to even explore what
Mm.
you might need. Those basic needs to me also mean sleep.
Mhm.
Are you
Yeah.
getting enough sleep? And I know that's hard, especially if you're in like the baby phase, right?
Mhm.
That's a journey. My
Yeah.
sister-in-law in there is there right now, and
Oh,
she's
yeah.
learning like, okay, sleep when baby sleeps.
Yeah.
um, but sleep is a really big one. And if the problem with sleep is that your brain won't quiet down enough to be able to sleep, then you need to be
Mhm.
looking at, do I have enough outlets that work for me to relieve some of this stress? Because we
Mm.
really do have to, this is in the burnout book, we have to reset our stress cycle to be able to successfully rest and feel
Mm.
rested, right? And there's lots of ways that we can reset our stress cycle, but if you're not doing that, then it is going to be really hard to
Mm.
let your brain calm down enough to sleep. So those would be the areas that I would start with, making a little bit of time for yourself to reflect. Make sure you're
Yeah.
getting enough sleep. And if your brain's not letting you get enough sleep, seeing where you can discharge some stress.
Mm. Yeah. Are there any common things to relieve that you find that come up often?
Mm-hmm. The most effective for most people is some sort of physical activity.
Mm.
It doesn't have to be traditional exercise, but like going back to the pandemic again, when I was needing that space and time, I was also needing a way to discharge my stress
Mm.
because I had lost some of my other ways. And I was going on walks and it didn't feel like enough. And one day when I
Mhm.
was walking, I was like, I feel like running. And so I just ran like a little, and I am not a runner. I promise you, I am not. But I actually wanted to. So I ran just a little
Mm.
bit, just like a short little sprint. And it was enough to feel that like wave of relief that you get
Mm.
when you've just exerted yourself.
Yeah.
So, whatever gets those endorphins flowing for you, whether that's running or dance or a hot yoga
Mhm.
class or whatever it is, that's really effective for most people.
Mm.
And if you can't exercise, like if your body won't let you, like you are just way too exhausted for it, then the other really effective way is called the 20-second hug. And
Ooh.
in a 20-second hug, what happens is fun hormones get released,
Mm.
oxytocin, which gives us a little boost, right? Makes us feel connected because connection is one of those things that helps us reset the stress cycle. And in the 20-second hug, you stand there, the other person stands there, and you're both supporting your own body weight and you're hugging for 20
Mm.
seconds. And that can feel a little awkward. You don't realize how long 20 seconds might be. So, like, you want it to be somebody that you feel comfortable with. But those 20
Mhm.
seconds, that's a super quick way,
Mm.
super easy way to get a little reset.
That's actually something that I naturally find myself doing with my husband is I'll just
Mm-hmm.
like go in for a hug and he just knows that that's
Uh-huh.
something that I need and we'll just stand there hugging until I let go because it's something that I initiated. So then I'll let go and he'll
Yeah.
knows that. And we don't even have a conversation about it. Or sometimes he'll
Yeah.
ask like, "Are you okay?" or "What's going on?" But we've gotten to the point where you just know that's what I need to, keep going, or to,
Yep.
get through that morning. Yeah, or the
Yeah.
little whatever was going on.
Right? Like, kiddo just had a tantrum. I need to reset. Give me a hug.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's really about, that's like the co-regulation.
Yes,
Hmm.
absolutely. And that comes back to like taking care of our own stuff well enough to help our
Hmm.
kids with their stuff. How can we co-regulate with them?
Yeah.
Help them do that if we're on the brink of collapse ourselves.
Hmm.
We can.
Yeah.
We can.
Hmm.
Even if we're like
No.
doing everything by the book. If emotionally we're on edge, our kids can sense that. They are
Oh
very
yeah.
perceptive.
They are. And when oftentimes it's like the perception is kind of, I guess, taught out of them
Mm-hmm.
whenever they seem not as perceptive, but kids are usually so, like, they just sense everything and they notice everything and they just take it all in.
They do.
And I had seen something recently that was like, we need to start getting away from telling moms that the reason they should fill their cup is so that they can give more to their family. But I can see where this person was coming from. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, that's a lot of the reason that motivates moms to do something for
Mm-hmm.
themselves, is so that they can give back and show up for their family in the way that they want to.
Yeah.
But I think the
Well,
message underneath that was, you don't have to do it for someone else. You can do it just for yourself.
absolutely. Absolutely. I think the concern that comes up for a lot of people when you say like you can do it just for yourself is like, oh, that feels so selfish, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But for me, what makes the most sense is we're taking care of ourselves enough that we can actually live out our values, right?
Mm, mm-hmm.
Whether those values are our family, our community,
Yeah.
planet, whatever it may be that like is
Mm-hmm.
most important to you, you're not going to be able to give yourself to it in the way that you want to if you
Mm-hmm.
haven't taken care of yourself.
Yeah.
And so maybe that is your family. Cool. Maybe it's not. That's cool too, right? You get to choose your values. No one else
Mm-hmm.
has to tell you what they
No, I think that's a really great way to frame that. So if someone is in Idaho and they're thinking, oh, Megan, it sounds like Megan would be a great fit for me.
are. Mm-hmm.
Or are there other ways that people can work with you first if they're not in Idaho?
Mm-hmm.
And if so, what's the best way to get in contact with you? Those things.
Yeah, coming soon, another way to work with me if you're not in the state of Idaho. And I'm giving myself the space and time I need to
Mm,
figure out exactly what it looks like. But it is going to be something that involves community and teaching about
mm,
how to set those compassionate boundaries, that we are taking really good care of ourselves. And you can hear more about that from either getting on my email list or following me on Facebook. You can get on my email list at my website, which is meganscarney.com. And my Facebook page is Psychologist Megan. Megan spelled the easy way, Megan.
yeah, but we'll link all that up in the show notes. So if you're driving and you don't have a pen and paper or something, your phone is about to die, we will put that all up in the show notes.
Yeah, and I think it'll be done by the time that this goes out. I will also have a little freebie that you can get as well, so we can put a link to that too.
Awesome. Yeah, yeah, we'll definitely put that up. And if someone is in Idaho and they want to work with you, do they get in contact with you the same way?
Yep, they get in contact by my website. There's a easy little button to click to schedule, and you can schedule a free consultation with me. And that is the most efficient way to get any
Mm.
sort of contact with me because I'm a mom too.
Great, great. Well, thank you so much, Megan, for joining us today and giving some of us things to think about in terms of boundaries and thinking about our needs.
Yeah, thank you again for having me, Kayla. It's been fun. It definitely felt like just friends chatting. All
Yes. Well, I will see you soon.
right, bye bye.